Good strategy.
You guys ready?
Everybody adapts.
All right, I'd like to call this Monday, May 15th, School Committee Business Meeting to order. Mrs. Yell, can you take the roll, please?
Leah Reardon,
I'm here.
Sarah Hall,
Here.
Bruce Nutting,
Here.
Steve Cole is absent, Brianna Higgins,
Here.
Juliet Walker,
Present.
Brian Callahan.
Here.
All right, can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I will now turn it over to Vice Chair Hall.
Good evening, everyone. Do we have anyone here for public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to student and staff recognitions.
All right.
All right, thank you very much. We have some special guests that we'd like to recognize tonight. And we'll start with our student recognition first. Tonight, we're recognizing 2 high school students for their dedication and commitment in their leadership and providing student voice as student representatives on our school committee over the past 2 years. You can tell they don't like to get recognized too often. Now you get to relax and enjoy and listen to all your great accomplishments. And a father of 2 daughters, this is actually enjoyable. All right. So first is Olivia Hanson, who will be attending the University of Vermont in a neuroscience major. She's been involved in so many activities throughout her schooling, stemming for leadership all the way back in the middle school and even elementary school. But Olivia's been involved in representing the Newburyport Education Foundation. She's one of the students that sits on that board. She's the president of the National Honor Society. She's also a Best Buddies member. She works for Tinker House as an assistant art teacher. She teaches piano lessons and assists in directing the local children's choir. And I could go on and on of all the other accomplishments. But more importantly, she's been a great member and an asset to the school committee for the past couple of years, and we're very pleased. So come on up, Olivia Hanson. You're very welcome. You can wait right there. We'll call Mr. Wolf up too. Come on up, Mr. Wolf. Yes. All right. Our next recipient is also our school committee representative, and she'll be attending Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, in a computer science major. Avery Hawkeyser has also began a lot of leadership in the elementary and also middle school years. We're recognizing her for a lot of different things. First, she's the president of the German National Honor Society. She's also the president of the National Art Honor Society, and she's a member of the National Honor Society. She's also a member of the book club, and along with other clubs and leadership throughout her high school career. She also, with all of the time that she spends in academics in all of her student activities, she's also been a full-time employee for the past 4 years at Bob's Lobster. So Avery, we want to thank you for 2 years of service and dedication to the school committee, and we wish you the best. So come on up. Aaron. Right here, we just get a quick, Lisa Marie, want to give you the camera? All right. Photographer. All right. Our second recognition tonight is a staff recognition. We'll be recognizing Mary Kate Allen. Mary Kate, AKA MK, is an 8th grade science teacher at the NOC on the Crimson 8 team. If you Google search a teacher leader, MK's picture would be the first to pop up. Mary Kate Allen serves as the NOC's curriculum leader for science, providing support to all of our 6 to 8 grade science teams and other teachers, as well as working closely with the NOC administration and Mr. Marcos on curriculum development and decision-making. Ms. Allen also supports the NOC administrative team with planning the 8th grade end-of-the-year events, and has also put in countless hours in planning the 8th grade trip to Philadelphia this year, from start to finish. She's a true professional that always puts students first. Her classes are welcoming, innovative, and fun. And every year, many of the 9th grade and 10th grade students will come back to the NOC Middle School to visit their former teachers, and they come and see her in droves. They always want to say hello, and they thank her for making learning fun for them. I feel like Mary Kate leads from the front. The NOC is a much better place because of her commitment, dedication to our students and community. And most importantly, she told me the best class that she's ever had is the one I'm teaching. So, come on, come on up, Mary Kate. Mr. Marcos, did you want to come on up?
Sure, we'll now take a brief recess. All right, we're gonna jump back in with the Swayze Fund presentation.
Awesome. At this time, I'd like to call up our Swayze board members: James Marshall, Tom Bean, Noni Olson, Mark Littlefield, and Renee Ames. And they're gonna give them a round of applause. So working with the Swayze organization, one of the great pieces, I have a clicker if you want. Yeah. Yeah, we are fancy here now. Advancement. Coming into the district, there were a few organizations that really separate the Newburyport community from all of the other communities, I think in the surrounding area, but also throughout the state. One of these foundations, one of these organizations, the Swayze Fund, which I had to learn a lot about the history behind the Swayze family and the support of teachers. I'm not going to steal any of your thunder, but it's a very important organization for us to continue the advancement of our professional development and support of teachers, especially during many challenging times and innovation. So at this time, I will have the board members run through their brief presentation. Thank you.
Each year around this time, as you're doing budget, we know that Swayze Fund keeps coming up in terms of talking about professional development, but we thought it was kind of time to kind of come out and kind of talk about what Swayze Fund actually is, what its mission is, and kind of educate school committee members and the community as to exactly what Swayze Fund is. So it all stems from Mr. Swayze, who was a longtime resident of Newburyport, who was involved in shipping and manufacturing and served as the treasurer of Toll Manufacturing. Upon his death, he sprinkled lots of money in lots of places in Newburyport. So the Swayze Fund for the Relief of Public School Teachers is not the only place where you'll find Mr. Swayze's name, but this is the one we're here to highlight this evening. The original mission for the funds was for the relief and support of those teachers who have taught in the public schools for at least 10 years if their financial condition required it. And this includes both current and retired Newburyport public school teachers. Some examples of support that have been provided for teachers in need include things to help essentially people who have maybe retired and are living on a much more fixed income, maybe from many, many years ago when the financial condition warranted. So it could include installing a chairlift for a elderly retired teacher, to renovating a bathroom, to financial support for challenging medical problems that are not covered by insurance. The current mission of the Swayze Fund has expanded a bit and now includes assistance to teachers within the Newburyport Public Schools. And this is primarily financial support in the form of professional development. The key emphasis here needs to be that this is designed for teachers, not for necessarily paying the electric bill, not for something that's contractual. In fact, we're very strict about the fact that we will not approve something if it's part of the typical operating budget or if it's something that's contractual, like a stipend or, for example, a teacher's position. It's to fund things that go above and beyond. And you might think of it this way: if the Swayze Fund wasn't there funding some of these professional development opportunities, how would some of these opportunities even be supported? Would they be? Would they be trimmed back? Would teachers be reaching into their own pocket to pay for it? So it's giving some source of resources beyond what the community and the state are able to fund. So for the 2023-2024 school year, the Swayze Fund contribution to the Newburyport Public Schools in this cause is in the amount of $275,000. I can't tell you the exact year that the partnership started with the Newburyport Public Schools. I guess I'm the one with the longest tenure on the board, so I kind of went back through my notes over the last 12 years. And over the last 12 years, the grand total that we have, the Swayze Fund has contributed is a little bit over $2 million to the Newburyport Public Schools. So I just thought we all kind of felt like it was time for Mr. Swayze to get his public recognition for these funds that he contributed many, many, many years ago in his will. And so I'd like to present a check for the 23-24 school year in the amount of $275,000.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to get a look at it.
You wanna look at
It's a big old check.
All right. S-E-A-N? No.
R-E-A-R-D-O.
I'll just tell you, I can't, on behalf of the Newburyport Public Schools, the Swayze Foundation, since in my 5 years of being here, have funded so many things that we could not have funded through an operational budget. You know, we talk about the portrait of a graduate, and all of the aspects of that are tying right back to the support of the Swayze. So from the innovation to the technology, professional development, to a lot of the data presentation that you're going to hear about tonight, a lot of the professional development has been solely funded through the Swayze Foundation. And it's just, once again, assisting us with our mission, our strategic plan, and it's just an amazing family, amazing group of people that really put kids first in this city, and we are so fortunate of that. So we want to thank them for that. At this time, I'd like to see if we could call for another quick little recess so we do a little photo op.
Sure.
Would
we'll
that be
take-
great?
We'll take another couple minutes recess. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, once you get in the middle, we'll have the-
I want to know what the initial investment stock from Toll, right?
The consent agenda. Are you all set, Mr. Callahan? for
Oh, I am.
once? Okay, go for it.
We have warrants, and I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $871,776.49 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have one set of minutes to approve. It's from the May 1st business meeting. Are
So-
there
so
any
moved.
corrections?
Oh,
Are there,
yeah.
well, first, are there any corrections? Your minutes are so wonderful, Miss Yale, we can just go right into it. So, we have a motion.
So moved.
Second, and I just want to add, thank you so much for the very detailed review of the policy section. I really found that very helpful. Thank you.
That's great. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's time for the final student representative report of the year.
It's 5 pages long. don't
We're
worry.
ready.
So it's long. All right. All right, so starting off with the Bresnahan, third graders wrapped up MCAS testing last week, and the hard work and dedication of both the students and staff is impressive. And a school-wide gratitude garland. The whole Bresnahan School is creating a gratitude garland. This is a project facilitated by our counseling and PBIS team to explore what is gratitude. Staff will have conversations with students that gratitude is expressing thankfulness for the things we appreciate in life and the good things in our lives. And they will have a school-wide gratitude assembly later in May to link the garland together and see how much gratitude we all share. The STEAM Expo is coming up on May 23rd, and the expo is an opportunity for first, second, and third grade classes to experience hands-on exhibits related to science, technology, engineering, art, and math. The expo is entirely volunteer-run, including volunteer exhibitors from across our community, parents, local businesses, nonprofits, and some of our very own high school students. Exhibits this year include a great range of topics like balanced nutrition by Nourishing the North Shore, Building Strong Structures by Bresnahan parent Brian Zampel, and a crowd favorite, Spot the Robotic Dog, thanks to Code and Circuit. Thank you to the PTO for financial sponsorship of this event. And then a field trip recap for kindergarten. They went to the Dover Children's Museum, and it was fun-filled and informative. They attended a program where they learned about animals in the environment and had about an hour to explore the museum and its many exhibits. And then in grade 1, first graders visited the Great Bay Discovery Center and learned about the plants and animals that call the Great Bay and Greenland, New Hampshire home. Students were able to hold animals such as horseshoe crabs and green crabs at the discovery tanks, as well as walk through the woods and guess what kind of tracks animals left behind. And grade 2, earlier in the fall, second grade visited the Ipswich River Wildlife Sanctuary in the Museum of Science in Boston. At Ipswich River Wildlife Sanctuary, students participated in educational and fun nature-based programs on 2,000 acres of interesting habitats, including fields, vernal pools, forests, swamps, islands, and eschers. And for grade 3, this week, the 3rd grade will be visiting Spencer Pierce Little Farm. This program immerses students in early local history in an authentic 17th century setting. During a visit to the Coffin House, museum teachers will lead students in role-playing the daily chores and skills that define the lives of early settlers. Students will participate in journal writing as they learn about the roles and responsibilities of each family member and the early community they formed. Over the years, the 3rd grade team has worked to partner with Spencer Pierce Little Farm to make this a customized field trip that directly ties to the curriculum standards and provides students with a deep connection to their own local history. Our youngest students in preschool have not been off campus for exploratory learning, but they have enjoyed Curious Creatures and the Tanglewoods marionettes to come to the Bresnahan. And now on to the art walk. It is going on in town, and we have many Bresnahan students participating. It will take place during the month of May and coincide with the annual K-12 Performing Arts Waterfront Festival on May 20th. Bresnahan students will perform from 3 to 4 p.m. And then on to the Mullen. For the Mullen School, 5th graders displayed their knowledge of the scientific method and engineering design process at the Mullen Annual STEM Fair last Friday. Projects range from how does an egg react to different liquids, to building a cotton ball catapult, to shoe recycling and shoe design. Students were very impressive when answering questions and explaining their projects. The 4th grade STEM Fair is on June 2nd.
And then from the high school, so the students wrapped up their AP exams last week. Congratulations to all of our students who have participated in the exams over the past 2 weeks. We have 226 different students take at least one test, with a total of 405 exams being administered. Tomorrow night will be our academic honors night. Outside of graduation, this is one of our larger ceremonies of the year. This event recognizes the academic accomplishments of our students, and during the ceremony, the senior class valedictorian, salutatorian, the Bresnahan Scholar Athlete, and our first time ever, the Newburyport Scholar Artist, address and all those in attendance. The speakers this year are senior class valedictorian Gianna McKeown, senior class salutatorian Olivia Hansen, Bresnahan Scholar Athlete Deirdre McElhenney, and Newburyport Scholar Artist Sophia Hartford. Last Wednesday, Newburyport High School was part of the North Shore Scholars Banquet in Danvers. This event recognizes senior students in the top 5% of their respective classes from the high schools across the North Shore. Our scholars include Will Aquaviva, Olivia Barbera, Fiona Flynn, Olivia Hansen, Avery Hawkeiser, Ria Kaur, Gabby Loughran, Kelly McDermott, Deirdre McElhenney, Gianna McKeown, and Lily Ragusa. And then for congratulations to our slam poetry team. The weekend of the 6th, they won the state's youth slam competition at the Mass Poetry Festival. Team members are Riley Doherty, Abney Martino, Nick O'Connor, Tula Sullivan, Nadia Toth, and Kaisa Widger. Congratulations to Avery Stevenson, who was recently recognized by the National Association of Women Artists for her outstanding artistic creativity and talent. The senior class historians, Skylar and Whitney Kelsey, have been working hard to post everyone's plans via the class Instagram page. Please head there and follow along to join us in celebrating the amazing accomplishments of the class. 32 students and 4 chaperones just completed their annual National Art Honor Society field trip to New York City. Over the 3 days, students and their chaperones explored the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Brooklyn Museum. In addition, they explored live performances and art displays of the High Line, completed a photo scavenger hunt at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, and attended Bad Cinderella on Broadway. And then for athletics, it's looking like the spring season will be extending into June once again. Most of our teams will be eligible for postseason tournament play. Some noteworthy accomplishments so far include girls tennis is ranked number 1 in Massachusetts D3. Girls lacrosse is also ranked Massachusetts number 1 in D3. Girls track is the division state relay champions. And then for the spring college championships to date, girls tennis, girls lacrosse, and boys track. Newburyport High School would also like to acknowledge senior Isabel Rosa. This season is in girls lacrosse. She has hit 2 century marks, 100 goals, and 100 assists. Definitely an impressive milestone. Lily Pons also scored her 100th goal for lacrosse. Alongside Isabella's accomplishments, senior tennis player Caroline Scholson is 56-0 in her tennis career and ranked number 1 in MA and number 4 in New England. Way to go, Caroline. Intermediate Web Design, and Advanced Robotics recently were invited to tour Google in Cambridge. These classes are taught by Casey Milty and Sarah Ledbeater. Students in Advanced Robotics engage in deep study of the systems and concepts of robotic mechanisms. Many of these students participate in our award-winning Sailbot team, which competes against colleges and other high schools from around the country. Dates to know: Monday, May 15th is the spring music concert at the high school. Tuesday, May 16th is the academic honors night. Saturday, May 20th is the Waterfront Festival, which is an amazing display of the artistic performance abilities of our students from across the school system. And then throughout May, the Art Walk will take place and coincide with the Newburyport Public Schools Performing Arts Waterfront Festival, sponsored by the Newburyport Education Foundation. And it's Saturday, May 20th from 12 to 4 at the Waterfront Park. Saturday, June 3rd at 10 a.m. is Senior Graduation Car Parade. Come cheer on our graduates and their families in this new tradition that began a few years ago. This is a fun way for families to kick off their graduation weekend. Thank you to Mayor Reardon and the NEF and the PTO for partnering with us to continue this fun activity.
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, up next, we have the K through 8 assessment data presentations.
Awesome. All right, we'll call up the team back there to come on up. You know, as we've been, I think throughout the year, we've been talking about new programs, and the wish of the school committee is to have more data presentations and kind of have some check-in. So tonight's presentation, Ms. Ippolito and our administration will kind of go over some of the key aspects. This is the mid-year data, so this is February, March benchmarks, and we are now doing our end-of-the-year data assessments the end of May and beginning of June. And we anticipate additional growth as we come into next school year. So one of our first school committee agenda items is kind of review the end of the year benchmarks and see where we're at with the growth. So how'd I do? All right?
Perfect.
All right. So take it away, Ms. Ippolito.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Before I start, I'd like to just give a shout out to our Newburyport PTO. They hosted the kitchen tour on Saturday. It was my first time there. It was outstanding, very well attended, and just got a lot of buzz. So congratulations to all those members. And we had 7 additional staff members besides myself and Katie Parsons who hosted a home,
Wow.
which was fun. Yeah, so
Awesome.
good teamwork by everyone.
And I think they raised almost $30,000.
That's what I heard, 30,000 plus. Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to end at 4, and people just kept on. We were the last house, of course, that had the food, so people just kept on coming. It was so lovely. It was
And I think that also kind of just ties in about our community, right? From the PTO to the NEF to Swayze, just really putting students and family first. And, you know, that's been the great tradition here in Newburyport. That's been going on for a very, very long time. So we're very fortunate to be part of that.
extremely, extremely. It was lovely.
You might just want to bring that mic down a little
Down
bit. There you
more?
go. Perfect.
Okay.
So we can hear you.
There you go. Okay, so as the superintendent says, this presentation is a comparison or a growth model from the fall data to the winter data. And then we're going to also be talking Principal Marcos and Principal Sokolowski will then get into interventions that they utilize using this data within their own buildings. And unfortunately, Principal Rossi cannot be here tonight, so Principal Sokolowski will do her presentation. Okay. All right, and so you'll see this is similar to what the presentation was in the fall, so just to kind of give us context again. The approach the slide presentation is to answer the common question asked about assessment in the district. The first of those questions is typically, why do you assess your students? In the Newburyport Public Schools, we continue to reflect and build a systematic approach towards assessment. In the past year, as we discussed in the fall, we've evaluated new tools. So our new tool this year was iReady, that replaced the STAR assessment system. And our first look is to see how these assessments relate to the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks for instruction. And then assessments, again, here's the list of a variety of assessments that we use in the district. We use assessments that are standardized, but we also look at the whole child and are embedding more performance-based assessments. This year in the district, we also, and most of our content areas have completed their Stage 2 mapping. So the Stage 2 mapping is the assessment, the evaluation part of any curriculum planning that you're doing within the district. And they use the information from Stage 1, which is actually charting out the standards that we are addressing, the vocabulary, and the objectives. So the staff has done an excellent job, and the hope is by next fall, those materials will be published and have full access to all the staff on a shared drive. So this is, when do you assess your students? And so we didn't have this last time, but we added the middle school assessment calendar. You can see they're very similar. This includes regular observation and database decision-making to guide instruction. The calendars were presented to staff during our professional development by their building administration and were created collaboratively by the Office of Teaching and Learning, specifically Allie Burns, Rebecca Stewart, and myself. And it's just so great to see a focus on data-driven practices and collaborative approach to professional development and planning our curriculum for our students. How do you collect the data? So this information here shows the various teams. As I had stated earlier, this school year, the district data team was established. This school year, it proved to be very successful. We're going to continue that into next year, combined with our CELs and ILTs joining together. We're not only collecting data, but also actively using it to inform instructional decisions and adjust instruction or behavioral expectations for individuals or groups of students. The establishment of the district-wide data team and school-based data teams that involve educators, the curriculum vertical team, school and district administration is a positive step to ensure that our data is being used effectively. It's also encouraging that our building administration is working collaboratively with the superintendent and myself on the drivers for the upcoming budget, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. Because that suggests a commitment to making data-driven decisions at all levels of the organization, aligned to the portrait of a graduate and our school and district behavior, school improvement plans. It's also important to recognize this is an evolving cycle that the district is currently going through. We're looking to grow and refine our approach in the way that we look at data and how we use it to inform our practices. And what important steps are we taking so that students are receiving the support that they need. We recently instituted a change in the use of our Google Data Analytics platform. We're working with Paul Minuti, and he's wonderful to work with. And so the change is that we'll be able to view individual students more clearly. Let's see, there it is there. So let's see. So you can't see it. Right here would be a student's name. And so this is an individual student's whole profile, and it will have historical data listed here, so that when a teacher is able to pull up their class, they can go by individual student, or a principal could do that as well. And then on the side over here, I think I'm too far away. On the left-hand side are the demographics of that student. Some areas I did white out because we don't want any information shared publicly about an individual student. But then that circle down the bottom actually shows the overall benchmark performance of the student. So when looking at their data, you can see that they're exceeding, I can't read that percentage from here, but they're exceeding in the blue, and they're meeting in the green. So you can tell that this student, as of these assessments that they've been given, have been consistent in the fact that they are on or above grade level. So it's a great little snapshot. You can also, teachers can also click in and just keep drilling down further and further to look at standards, connections between assessments, and so that will be another change for next year. When the teachers return next year, they'll each have their own class list of their students, as well as our special education staff will have their list of students, and so that will help everyone in their planning for students and their individual needs.
I just wanted to, just to go back, so working, and this comes in, I think, working with teachers and our teacher leaders, is making the data accessible for them in the classroom. So we're doing a lot of, as Lisa Marie said, from our vertical data team with our building-based administration teacher leaders. But some of the feedback that we received over the past 18 months is, how do we get that data in the hands of teachers with the kids in front of them? So working with the analytics program, we'll be able to, or teachers will be able to, not only have the data of all the students in front of them, but we'll have a history of that data. So if you're grade 8, you're gonna be able to go back and look at each individual student that's in front of you. You can look at the grade level. So this is just the beginning of providing that data for classroom teachers. So they're not out looking for it all. It'll all be right there. So I know there's been a lot of work similar to developing our new website. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work to get this up and running. So we're excited to we'll be having this when the teachers start next school year. So just want to credit a lot of the work behind the scenes that's been going on to provide data for the teachers.
And the teachers will receive training in the fall as well. We're not just going to give it to them.
Right.
And for example, I didn't say this, for example, for this particular student, if you look at their MCAS from last year, they have a medical. So they did not take the math MCAS from last year. So that's important information for a teacher to have as well too. Okay, so how is data used? So we had gone over these tiers. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail because it helps us define the actual data that's going to be presented to you. So a multi-tiered system of support, the abbreviation is MTSS, is a way of helping students who are struggling in school. Involves providing different levels of supports or tiers to students based on their individual needs. So at first, the green, that's called the universal level. Universal tier, all students receive high-quality instruction and support. This might include small group instruction, additional resources, digital technology. If a student shows that they're struggling through their assessments, their general assessments in Tier 1, then they will move to Tier 2, which is more targeted tier. Here they receive more specialized support that is tailored to their specific needs, and this might include small group instruction, maybe some one-to-one tutoring or counseling. Finally, if a student continues to struggle, and we had discussed before, usually these tiers, when we are implementing an intervention, are 6 to 8 weeks long, so that we can truly see the effect and collect data on the intervention and how it's working or not working. So then finally, if a student is struggling after receiving targeted support, they may move to the third, or what's called the intensive tier. At this level, they receive even more specialized and intensive support, such as individualized behavior plans or specialized instructions, and some students at this tier are assessed for an IEP for special education. The idea behind MTSS is to catch and address academic and behavioral issues early on before they become more significant problems that may require more intensive interventions. By providing these targeted interventions and individualized support, we can help students reach their full potential, and we can also communicate with their families about the students' needs and supports that they could also provide at home. So internal data sources that we'll be looking at as data resources tonight. So we have Lexia Reading Core 5. It's used K through 3. It's a literacy, as it says, reading program. It's both evaluative, but it also has an instructional component to use. It's individualized based on ongoing adaptive assessments. You will not see data collected in this presentation from Lexia, only because it is so individualized. So I just wanted to make that clear. Then we use Amplify, otherwise known as Dibble 8. We upgraded last year to Dibbles 8, which the Title I team and the classroom teachers administer this assessment that we also use as our early literacy screener assessment using an iPad. And they found the functionality of that to move much more rapidly and we're able to get data a lot sooner. And that occurs K through 3. And then we're using iReady diagnostic assessment program. So it's data collection that we're doing depending on grade level in literacy and math, K through 8. This year, due to a grant, we were given the instructional component of iReady for free. And depending on what our curriculum choices are for next year, we may decide to then go ahead and purchase that instructional piece as supplemental as well. So just before I get started going over all the data, here's just a little data key. So the number on all the graphs represent number of students. So I just want to be clear about that. BOY stands for beginning of the year. MOY stands for middle of the year. And then down the bottom is the DIBELS kind of legend. So it just tells you, if you were reading a report, I didn't use those colors, but if you're reading a report, you know, red means intensive, typically intensive means 2 to 3 grades below grade level. Strategic typically stands for 1 grade level below. The core is on grade level, and core plus is above grade level, if you want to put it kind of frame it in your mind in those terms. Okay, so we're going to start with kindergarten. A couple of things I just want to talk about before I even present the data. I want to see, oh, nope. Let me just move a little closer. See if this is going to work. Okay, here we go. So when you look at the labels kind of going down the side right here and here, those labels are different on purpose because these are the labels that iReady uses for proficiency, and these are the ones that the DIBEL program uses for proficiency. So I just wanted to make that clear.
I know you're stepping closer, but when you step away from the mic, they can't get you on the.
Yeah, so I'll just repeat it
recording.
now that I just did that. So basically what I was saying is the labels on the left-hand side of each chart are the proficiency levels designated by either iReady or DIBELS, the program. So we wanted to be authentic in presenting that data, so left the labels the same. Okay, so when looking at this data, kind of built it like a tree. And so if we start at the very bottom where it says the big yellow bar, and it says a 64 within the center of the bar. So 64 students at the beginning of the year in kindergarten scored approaching grade level on their iReady math data assessment, diagnostic assessment. And so then the bar above it, which is green, so anything green is a mid-year number. And so that number changed by 36 students to show that 28 students now are approaching grade level on their mid-year diagnostic assessment. So that's some great growth that you can already see there. So then as we continue to move up the kind of tree, you'll see a 12 in the middle of the yellow box. And so that 12 stands for 12 students at the beginning of the year were at grade level on the diagnostic. And on their mid-year, that changed by 8 students have now moved into at grade level to make 20 students. Then we continue up, and in the yellow box, it has a 24. So on the beginning of the year, 24 students were above grade level. And now, for their mid-year diagnostic assessment, that number is now 52. So you can basically say 28 students had growth that moved them into the above grade level category. And so following that same, and all the data points for every grade follow that same pattern. So then on the right-hand side is our kindergarten DIBELS literacy data. So starting at the bottom, beginning of the year, 27 students were listed as intensive. On their mid-year assessment, that number went down to 9, so a change of 18 students. Above that is a 26, so 26 students were strategic at the beginning of the year, and now that number is 14 students. 19 students at the beginning of the year were on grade level or core, and currently that number is 33. And then above grade level or core plus at the beginning of the year was 31 students, and now that number is 46. So you can see a significant bump of about 29 students who moved to on and above grade level. So what we do with this data is when we're looking at it, so I'll take the math for example. So what we do behind the scenes is then we take a look at the math domains. So what I mean by that, within the math curriculum frameworks, it's broken down into the 4 domains for kindergarten. So numbers in base 10, operations and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and geometry. And so when we look at that data, we say, well, like, are they shifting in all the domains? Are they shifting in some of the domains? Like, let's dig a little deeper, not just go to this top level to see where we might need to do some more interventions. I'm happy to say in the kindergarten, they increased in all domains in their math. So that was wonderful. And the positive about that is we also look at our pacing guide to say, what have we taught them already this school year? Have we seen the biggest jump in that space? Because kindergarten does a lot of hands-on activities above and beyond the regular pacing guide, we saw it globally across all domains. So grade 1, you can see, especially their iReady math data had some significant changes. Definitely celebrating the growth in the math assessment. When looking at the DIBELS data, we see that there's some growth, but there's also some bumping of children moving either up or down. And when teasing this out, we found that 10 of the students are on the cusp out of that 29 students who are green for intensive. 10 of those students were 1 point off for strategic. So we looked at those 10 students. We also, when looking at strategic and intensive, we break down the students into who's already receiving some specialized service, whether it is students on an IEP, students receiving English language learner services, Title I students, math intervention, and if they're not, then we pose the question of why. Why not? Was this a bad day? What is their performance in the classroom? Looking at all of those, were they sick? Like attendance, there's a lot that questions that we ask at that point. So you can see grade 2. So on the grade 2 iReady math data, at the beginning of the year we started with 24 students who were below grade level, and we had a significant shift of 18 students who left that category, so now we're down to 6 students who are below grade level on the diagnostic assessment. And then you see another change when you move to approaching grade level. It says 60 students, and that number is now 52. At grade level in the fall was 12 students, and that has a significant jump of 14 students to 26 students. And then above grade level, in the fall we had 4 students, and now we have 15. So when, again, looking at this data, we discovered that looking at geometry, this area was a little bit more limited in its growth. However, we also know that those standards are not taught authentically until the spring. So there's still definitely growth, but like I said, we don't want to just stand on the shoulders of just this piece of data. We want to keep digging and digging to make sure that students are getting what they need. And then second grade DIBELS on the right-hand side. So we had 37 students who were intensive at the beginning of the year assessment, and now there are 33. We had 21 students in the fall who were strategic, and now we have 23. We had 42 students who were on grade level, and now we have 39. And we had 38 students who were above grade level, and now we have 42. So you can see some students shifted and changed, and in this data, I believe there's 1 student who moved who's not accounted for also in this data. And so kind of on some of the charts, I'm just sharing with you some deeper dives that we do. So when looking at the students who are above or below grade level, so we discovered that 2 students who are special education students, 1 was above grade level, 1 was on grade level. I want to make sure I don't say anything identifying. So they didn't necessarily have academic IEPs, but it was great to see that they are assessing the curriculum and moving forward in their learning. We also found that we had 13 of our special education students who were in the approaching category that do have academic IEPs. And the 6 students who are below grade level all have interventions in place to support them with what they need to be successful. Okay, grade 3. So when you go into grade 3 and you look at the standards, there's a shift that happens. I think we've talked about this before. So a shift happens where we move from learning to read to reading to learn. The assessments also change a little bit, where the expectations are somewhat higher for 3rd grade students. They're much more mature. So when looking at this data, we would say that the DIBELS data on the right-hand side for the mid-year is stable. We are currently beginning the end-of-the-year DIBELS assessment administration, and that data will be available for us to review in June. And we're confident that we're going to see more movement towards on-level and above grade level, just from feedback from our Title I team. And the iReady math data reflects strong student growth and achievement, with previously having 16 students at our above grade level, to now we have 49 students from the middle of the year assessment. When looking at this growth, we know these students who were below grade level received not only intervention during the school day, but math intervention during both February and April vacations, and many of them also received support after school for math. So there's some budget implications there and grants that we receive to support the learning of our students. Another interesting thing when looking at the data on the math side was the domain of the OA standards, which is operations and algebraic thinking. Those are known as the why, like why does 2 + 2 = 4, not just knowing it rotely. And we saw a dramatic increase. It was like a maturity happened, like on paper, where you could see that the students really understand the math and are able to apply the skills that they've learned to the math. So that was something exciting for us to look at. I wanted to just interject, this is a new slide because we just happen to have the Title I parent meeting hosted at the Bresnahan School. So we have Title I in grades K through 3. So this year we tried a parent breakfast instead of having an evening event. And during that event, we asked the parents right then and there to scan a QR code and give us some feedback about our program. So parents and guardians reported that the Newburyport Public Schools Title I program has helped improve their child's progress in literacy. A suggestion would be to give them more family support to build confidence in their abilities to help their kids at home. So that we really liked that feedback. The Bresnahan School was rated 100%, does an extremely good job encouraging families to have a role in the school improvement planning process. We're extremely happy about that news. And then the preferred method of communication are either the top 3, there's a 3-way tie, letters and flyers sent home with the students, an email or a text message, compared to something posted on any kind of social media or what do you call it? Like a blackboard. They liked it really direct and kind of clean. So that was really interesting. And so our Title I teachers did an excellent job, along with Rebecca Stewart, and obviously Principal Sokolowski was there. So it was great. Okay, grade 4, data scores. We continue to see growth, and we're very comfortable with the progress our students are making. Once again, now looking at the iReady literacy data, you can see grade 4 went from 79 students on or above grade level to 111 students on or above grade level. So 4th grade is the first grade in our district where we use iReady for both math and literacy as our diagnostic tool. Grade 5, very similar. When looking at the information, there's a lot of wonderful growth here. especially students achieving on or above grade level on their current standards. Let's see. So then when we move to sixth grade, and Mr. Marcos will talk about this some more in detail, of how the Knock Middle School also takes this data and breaks it down and uses it so effectively, and really does a nice job with some progress monitoring that they do within their school and building. It's really impressive to hear. So starting with the iReady diagnostic math, beginning of the year, we had 26 graders who were below grade level, and we're currently at 17. We had 40 students approaching grade level, and now we have 24. We had 30 students on grade level, and now we have 34. And we had 10 above grade level, and now we have 25. Something to note for math standards, when you get into the sixth grade, not all the domains shift considerably, where they're doing ratios, equalities, inequalities, proportions, and the expectation is that they're able to pull basically their elementary math career together and apply all those skills pretty independently, beginning more so in sixth grade. Then looking at the literacy diagnostic assessment, so we started the year with 38 students below grade level, and now there's 27 students. We had 35 students approaching grade level in the fall, and now we have 29. We had 38 students at grade level, and now we have 29. And then at the beginning of the year, we only had 48 students above grade level, and now we have 75. So a significant growth in terms of reading and their love of reading. So Dr. Abrams does a beautiful job. We talk all the time about how we're going to enrich students and help them to progress in their literacy in various types of genres. And so he's run several book groups to support students at the Knock. And you can, when we look at this data, you can clearly see the impact of that, as well as the hard work and a lot of performance-based assessments and project-based work happening at the middle school. So seventh grade, you can see here that starting with math, and seventh grade math, a little ditty about them and their math standards, that they have the largest number of math standards of all the grade levels. I believe it's 28. So they have a lot of work to do in math in the seventh grade. Okay, so we started with 22 students below grade level, and now we have 17 students. We had 43 students approaching grade level in math, and now we have 30. We had 27 students at grade level, and now we have 33. And we had 8 students above grade level, and now we have 20. Looking at the iReady literacy side, we started with 27 students below grade level and now have 25. Then we had 21 students approaching grade level, and now we have 15. We had 20 students in the fall at grade level and now have 22. We have 32 students above grade level, and now we have 37. Okay, looking at our 8th grade data, you can see it's similar. If you're looking at the tree, starting at the bottom and working our way up, as the bars, the green bars tend to grow bigger. Some great growth here. What I would love to talk about as well is just a couple budget drivers that this data has indicated for us. So part of the 23-24 budget ask was for another math interventionist. And so when looking to bring our percentage down, we had conversations about what are the needs that we have in the district, where do we feel like we're being effective. And this data shows that as of right now, the intervention staff that we have is being effective in terms of supporting our students to have some academic growth. And so it was decided to see the impact, especially at the elementary level, of the new math program that will be implemented next fall first, and the Tier 1 supports provided, because whatever program we choose, it has a much more rigorous Tier 1 programming that will support students within the classroom. And then at that point, we'll continue to look at our data and decide whether that is a need or if we can use the staff that we currently have. Also, after reviewing this data at the school and district level and feedback from stakeholders about the use of these tools, because like we talked about, iReady is a new tool this year, and overwhelmingly, the staff has shared that they love using iReady so much more, partly due to the ease of administration, the ease of reading data, the instructional components that come with the program, and how they're able to share the information so easily with families at home. So we will be renewing iReady and continuing on with Dibbles. So, enough from me. I'm going to turn over. First I'll say, do you have any questions about the data pieces first? And then I'll turn it over to the principals.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair. I do have some questions. I have to be honest, it's a lot of information to absorb, and I don't want to like pepper a ton of questions at staff without some preparation on their behalf, and I know we have a very extensive agenda still to go through, so I was curious whether we can, I mean, certainly if other people have questions, but would we consider maybe having follow-up questions at the next meeting? Because I just feel like there's a lot to go through in this presentation, and we didn't go over it we didn't preview it at CISL this month, so I didn't have a chance to ask questions then either. So maybe just a consideration, what you think. And I could go into questions now, but I just felt like it might be better if other people want to say things. But I do have some more in-depth questions.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend, I think similar to some of the budget questions that we've had, you've submitted them early, and then we can almost do like a FAQ, and then present that, as part of the packet, and then we can have a discussion in the June meeting. Would that work?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm bringing it up, but I'm sure other folks
Sure.
might have questions.
Excuse me. Ms. Higgins?
I have some overall feedback and then a few questions for kind of across all grade levels, so even the principals might answer them. But overall feedback, and I previewed this for you, Superintendent, I just think the horizontal presentation of the graphs is a lot more difficult to digest than the vertical graphs that were at the beginning of the year. So just for next year, if you could present them in the same format from beginning to mid to end, I think it's just a lot easier to compare. I would also really appreciate seeing the percentages of students in each band rather than the numbers. I know it should be the same, type of chart, but I think percentages, again, is a little bit easier to digest. I'd also like, just for the overall schedule for next year, to try to get the data presentations a little closer to when the data is actually available. I would have really liked to see this data a couple months ago, like while we were in budget season, because I know this informed your budget decisions, but you knew it and we didn't. And so it would be great to, see this data before the budget decisions are made. And then lastly, disaggregating it by students with disabilities. I'd really like to see a bar chart that just shows how our students with disabilities are performing and making growth. So that's just my kind of overall feedback. A couple of questions, and some of them overlap, so just feel free to talk about each of them. But and I think you're about to talk about some of these, what were your overall takeaways when you saw the data, and how did you respond to it over the last few months, for the spring semester? How are you using this data to inform your strategic planning for next year and making decisions for next year? And then lastly, I see a lot of grade levels where there's quite a bit of stagnation in a way that I think is pretty concerning. I'm hoping that you would also be concerned seeing some of those numbers where especially students below grade levels below grade level is stagnant. There's growth in some grade levels and stagnation in others. And so I'm wondering if, are you providing, we've talked about interventions at the student level, but also at the teacher level. Are you looking at it by classroom and directing additional coaching support to some of those teachers? I'm not sure if they might be new teachers. Sometimes that explains things, but can they get additional coaching besides, just what is contractually obligated?
decisions for everybody, but I think if we get through our presentation, I'm hoping I can touch on all those.
Great.
Unless you want me to just ramble on.
I think that's fine, and then you can
Yeah,
follow
please.
up.
Is that okay?
with
If I, of
questions
course,
after
if I
that.
don't
Yeah,
answer,
absolutely.
am I next, by the way?
You
Oh,
are next,
perfect.
so
Look at that.
welcome, Mr. Marcos.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you. All right, good job. All right, so thank you for those questions, and I hope I can get to. If I leave something unanswered, just please, at the end, just ask me again. So again, one of our academic goals as a school this year for all of our staff has been this idea of data to plan, right? So we get all this data from MCAS. Now we have this data from iReady reading and math. Obviously, prior, we would have the Star 360 data. We get WIDA scores. We also get common assessments that we distribute and give to students early on in the school year based off of that schedule that we had. So let's just kind of walk you through as far as kind of what it looks like for us. So we obviously have a lot of data right now. We'll talk about that in a second. But in the fall, once we get this end of the year data along with our MCAS data, that is really going to guide what our maps look like. So our maps in the NOC are in really good shape as far for next year. And typically, in years past, we would spend a lot of time on ratios and proportions. So getting our staff to just really understand that, do we really need to spend 12 or 16 weeks on ratio and proportions? What is our data telling us? And I think that's where some of our coaching is happening for our teachers. Some are new, some are not. But again, I think it's just a different approach in supporting them in the sense of, just because we've always done it this way, let's really just use that data to drive that instruction. So if we have 80% of our students coming in understanding a specific standard, then we know that we can significantly reduce that time on that standard. So as you'll see, I'll talk a little bit about primary benchmarking and secondary benchmarking. So the great thing that iReady has done for us off of this data is, oftentimes we do focus on this, student intervention and students that need that additional support, whether it's through, a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, obviously. And I always look at it as you have a primary benchmark that you're teaching, standard 1.1, whatever that is in the given, this is really across the board. And that's something I'm going to continuously pace throughout the year, whether it takes me 4 weeks or 5 weeks, the data will tell us. But then after that initial baseline, whether it's from interim data, whether it's from the baseline data or our common assessments or anything from the iReady, then as a teacher, we go in through some deep professional development around talking about secondary benchmarking. So I know if I have 60% of my students that understand this data and I have 40% that don't, what does my practice look like in the classroom? How am I going to plan that lesson? Knowing that I have to move the curriculum along, I also have to pause and say, okay, these 3 students over here are really understanding this standard. These students just need a little bit more help, and these students are not getting it all. So how do I plan my lessons accordingly to really drive that instruction and drive that standard home for those students? So having not only that baseline, interim, end of the year assessment from iReady and the common assessments, just those everyday exit tickets, those formative assessments are again driving our day-to-day decision making. And there's a lot of coaching from myself, Katie Parsons, our TFL, Lise Como, and also Brenda Palmisano, so our 504 coordinator and our interventionist, really just understanding that coaching model, and I couldn't ask for a better team to drive that. On the student level, that's really where we look at our SST process. So, our teachers don't come into that process with no information. They're coming in saying, I've tried, these 4 or 5 strategies with a student. I'm not making enough, headway. What else can we do? So it's a very collaborative process, a very thoughtful process. We'll bring in common assessment, we'll bring in exit tickets, we'll bring in student samples. And when we talk about a specific student, what can we measure in that 2, 4, 6, or 8-week program, and then really make their decisions off of that. The great thing about the middle school schedule, also we have that flex block, which is an academic support block, slash, kind of study hall slash check in with your teachers. It's very similar to the Clipper block at the high school where students are getting some additional support, making appointments with their teachers and getting that one-on-one attention. You'll often find teachers as well pulling students in that just to reteach a specific concept or, a specific standard based on those classes. I hope I'm touching some of those questions. The other great thing that the iReady data has allowed us to do, if you guys remember, I think it was January where we recognized a group of students that were taking geometry. If it really wasn't for the data-driven decision-making that we're doing at the NOC, we wouldn't have those students in those classes. So iReady, essentially, you can, I guess, test out of iReady. So a student could be exceeding expectations or being above grade level on iReady, and then the teacher can go in and assign those students specific stretch standards. And after you master those, there's about 12 to 16 lessons right now in iReady, and this is one area that iReady has gone back to saying, we're gonna grow in that area to continuously be able to move students along. But this is what presented the data to us was, I think these kids may be able to take that geometry course online. And all 4 students are on track to finish part 1 with passing grades, well above passing grades, and then take that course, the second part of the course through the summer, and then obviously get assessed on where they are for their placement in high school. So that was really just a nice part of our data decision-making and getting that, real data in real time to support those students that need that enrichment as well, along with the interventions. And these are just specific examples, around the academic, executive functioning, and then we'll talk a little about the behavioral and social emotional intervention that we have. But this is really the middle school model. You can only imagine what a middle school teacher does on a daily basis with communication with students, especially around executive functioning. I think we've always been ahead of the curve in the district. I think that's something, ever since, Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Blue have been here, just really staying above the curve and not waiting for something to dictate. We're being very, very proactive. And I think one of the things that we've done over the past few years prior to COVID is really focusing on executive functioning. And I think you can understand how critical that is for a middle schooler, going from an elementary model where they have, essentially one classroom teacher all day long, and then coming into our building where they have anywhere from 7 to 8 teachers, including their Explore teachers, right off the get-go. So you can understand the transition is very difficult. So executive functioning is something that every 6th grade student actually gets that intervention or class, and then they meet periodically with Mrs. Palmisano during their flex block for those students that need that additional support around that specific skill. And then I've just included some of the behavioral interventions and social emotional interventions that we have in place at the NOC. I think some of the great things that we've done here, we have been able to reduce our suspension rate, taking a very restorative approach to discipline at the NOC over the past few years. I'm not sure if you guys want to click on that behavioral flow chart, but a lot of this is, again, tier 1 interventions that are handled at the teacher level. So, we have, we'll just use the name Sean, since that's pretty popular in the room. So Sean's, the type of student that's constantly out of his seat, constantly being disruptive. So rather than sending that student down to the office, our teachers are very, very proactive, and they put things in place. It might just be that conversation with the kid. It might be multiple conversations with that student. It might be conversations with Sean's parents after. It might be a teacher meeting. So just like these academic interventions that are in place, the same exact thing goes for our behavioral interventions when we have to, before we call a parent in to meet with administration, that parent knows that their child has gotten 10, 12, sometimes 15 plus chances to kind of correct the behavior. And we also have interventions for students. We have certain students on hall passes that just like to wander around. We have certain students that have to check in with counselors at certain part of the day to support them. And then again, just building on that, I think the PBIS model goes hand in hand with our advisory curriculum that we've been able to build over the past few years. So I just wanted to connect that whole child viewpoint for the middle school from that academic piece to that EF piece, the behavioral and the social emotional. So I'm hoping I touched on some of your questions, and I'm happy to answer anything else that I didn't get to.
Yeah, I think you basically touched on everything, and leave it open to other questions. I think the only other piece is any strategic planning changes for next year as a result of the growth. Is it about what you expected, less than, more than, and is that changing what you're planning to do for next year?
That's great. So I think if you came to my office right now, you're going to see a bunch of white charts all over the place, already thinking towards next year and what is our next move. So I don't think many of our goals will change. It's just how do we enhance them? So I think it just goes back to more coaching for our teachers, more exposure and hands-on with that data. Getting them the data, I think, earlier on is definitely key. I think that's something that, looking back at my leadership this year, I'd love to get that MCAS data and obviously iReady data early on, September, October. And I think the Google Analytics is really going to help our teachers in the sense of, our teachers, we have to build relationships at the same time. These kids got to trust us. I mean, we're all aware of that. But now at least you have a snapshot. Okay, man, this kid's a really high-performing kid in, these 3 or 4 aspects, or this kid really struggles in this house. So I think that is another way to get to know your student as you're building that relationship and learning how and understanding how they learn in the classroom. So again, I think my number one takeaway from this initial data is I love to see the growth. I'm going to love to see how the iReady data is comparable to the MCAS data, and really just see how that program can additionally support our student growth over the next few years.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so I'm here to present first on the Mullen, and then I'll follow up with the Bresnahan. So the Mullen interventions for academics, Tier 1, there's whole class, research-based instruction, lots of reteaching if necessary, and the assessments are used, as Nick explained, for the NOC to determine the next level of need. So we use iReady, we use exit tickets, discussions, rubrics. The Mullen teachers use a variety of, in the moment, classroom assessments as well as the formal data assessments that the district is using. The SST process at the Mullen is that teachers may refer students to the team for any reason, whether it's academic, social, emotional, regulation, behavior, and the team works together to make a specialized plan for that student and then check in 6 to 8 weeks to make a determination of next steps. And that would lead to Tier 2, which is a targeted intervention beyond just the core instruction based on student data and teacher input. The Mullen has 2 interventionists, one for math and one for literacy. The math interventionist serves 4th and 5th grade, and so does the literacy. And the interventions are based on specific skills that are identified as needs improvement. MyView has a MyFocus component, which is designed to help teachers target and address specific needs in their scaffolded lessons that are provided. And iReady has intervention lessons directly connected to the skills, and students are able to access that when they're on iReady on their computer. And there's games woven in between those lessons to keep the students engaged and giving them natural breaks and keeping them motivated. Tier 3 may provide students with daily, intensive, targeted small group or individual interventions addressing specific skill-based areas of deficit. This may also include a referral to the special ed process. Along with the academic interventions, there's a lot of social-emotional interventions going on at the Mullen. There's explicit teaching of expected behaviors through the PBIS process. There's the recognition system of the anchor stamps, a behavioral flow chart that, again, is similar to the Knox, and you'll see a similar one for the Bresnahan, so that students are getting used to the flow chart from an early age. It continues all the way through middle school. Teachers teach expectation lessons, and there's classroom and whole school rewards. The staff receives yearly PDM, PBIS, and trauma-sensitive training, and they create an environment where all students feel safe, welcomed, and supported. They also do the BIMIS, which I know Tara's talked about at a few school committee meetings. It's a great assessment where teachers 3 times a year just take a snapshot of a student that week. How's the student doing? What were they noticing just that week? And it helps flag some kids that might otherwise fly under the radar, and they're able to put in some immediate interventions based on that data. The Mullen also uses second step anti-bullying, a mindful moment. There's a yoga and mindfulness program, and a school-wide wellness day. Okay, I'll go right into the Bresnahan. So for Bresnahan academic interventions, again, we also have Tier 1, which is within the classroom. We often try to do small group instruction. If you walk into a Bresnahan classroom, you'll see stations set up throughout the day. You might go into a class where they're doing math, and there'll be a teacher in the back with a small group of students doing the lesson. There'll be students on computers doing iReady games and data assessments, and then other students doing some hands-on work with counting, flashcards, different
different activities to keep them engaged, and they rotate on a timer. So that way, all students in the class get access to the teacher in a small group to receive small group instruction and ask questions. It also helps the teacher get to know the students very well because they're having such a large amount of face-to-face time with them. We use universal screening results, formative assessments, and summative assessments to determine the focus of what those small groups will be. So as I said, you'll see small groups rotating, and often those small groups are strategically formed. Students who have similar needs moving together in small groups so that they're getting what they need with their teacher during the small group time. For Tier 2, we have the Title I literacy intervention. We have 4 Title I teachers, and our reading coach, Rebecca Stewart, works closely with the team to help guide their professional development and best practice. Title I is targeted intervention for students at risk on the universal screener, which is the DIBELS. So in a Title I session, Title I teachers are using structured literacy lessons. LIPS and RAVO are 2 programs. They do frequent progress monitoring, and we're lucky that we have 4 Title I teachers, so we're able to have 2 to 4 students per group, and those groups meet 4 to 5 times a week for 20 or 30 minutes. We have 2 math interventionists and our math coach providing math intervention for students, which is targeted instruction identified through the iReady data, universal screeners, formative and summative assessments. The instruction is the instruction is based on the data, identifying skills and standards that students need support in. Our math groups are about 3 to 5 students, and they meet 4 to 5 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes. And then Tier 3 is, again, it might be more intensive, small group or individual interventions focusing on a skill that the student needs to improve on, and it may be through the special education process. Similar to the Mullen and Knock, we have an SST team as well, where teachers refer students who might need anything from academic support, social emotional, we have a lot of behavioral referrals, and we have a team of, an occupational therapist, speech therapist, math coach, reading coach, and counselor, as well as our school psychologists who form the SST team. Teachers refer students after they've done a large amount of interventions in the classroom and are asking for additional support. They'll review what the teacher has tried, and then they'll make recommendations on a 6 to 8 week intervention schedule. So I've already mentioned our Title I team and our math interventionists. We also have a BCBA and an RBT who are often involved in the intervention process. They're behavioral experts, and they have a wealth of knowledge that the team works collaboratively with them to make decisions. Okay, so Bresnahan Social Emotional. We have PBIS at the Bres, as you also see at the Mullen and the Knock. The purpose is to foster a welcoming and positive climate and promote desired behaviors, and just at the youngest elementary school level, it's really about getting the kids to learn how to operate together in a community and function in a school setting. So at the elementary, we're also seeing that teaching behavioral expectations is essential to academic growth so that the kids are able and ready to learn, so that we can then work on meeting the standards and just improving their skills. So the Bresnahan school rules are be safe, be kind, be responsible. We refer to this daily. We have clipper stamps, it's like a little baby seal stamp that the kids get when they exhibit positive behavior in the classroom and in the hallways and out at recess, and that system continues to the Mullen, where they then get the anchor stamp. We do periodic rewards whole school. Teachers do weekly and monthly class rewards to keep the students motivated and engaged in the PBIS program. For our social emotional interventions, Tier 1, whole class, we do a daily mindful moment in our morning announcements. The morning announcements are videotaped by students, our teachers, staff members, so there's different faces every day on the screen that students are seeing, and they're all encouraging the mindful moment, so that's part of our culture at the Bresnahan. We do a morning meeting run by the classroom teacher, which is built on the evidence-based program Second Step. And it's all about forming healthy relationships and working together and just getting to know each other, resolving conflict. There's mindfulness time built into the day, which is usually after a transition, like coming back from special or lunch. And that could be a movement break, some quiet, active listening. There's a variety of things that our teachers do, but it's another way to just center the students, get them settled so that they're ready to learn. Our after-school Clipper courses, often throughout the sessions, there's a yoga or mindfulness option. And we have a crew block, which is 20 minutes once a week, where our PE teachers push into the classrooms to do team building and social emotional work with the teachers. It's often, role-playing, problem-solving, team games, things like that. The classroom teachers participate, so it's a really nice way to and again, keep promoting the whole school message to the students. For Tier 2, all students have access to 2 adjustment counselors and our school social worker whenever needed. And Tier 3 would be intensive services, partnering with special ed or the SST team and putting a regular counseling schedule or session with our social worker on a student's schedule. Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm familiar with the PBIS and all of those things. Is there anywhere on the website that the behavioral flow chart can be found for parents? I haven't been able to find it, but what were you saying? I'm sorry.
That's a great question.
Yeah. I can say no.
I'm not sure if it's on our website right now. We have sent some of the PBIS materials home to parents.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great resource just to be up here,
Yeah.
so that someone can find that at any time. I mean, the PBIS stuff is great. I would imagine under the schools, each particular school section, like here's our information about everything Ms. Sucklex just said. So
Yeah, that's a great
that'd be great. Thank you.
Ms. Blocker?
So as I mentioned, I probably have some follow-up questions, but I'll just try to limit what I asked tonight. This sort of broad question about how the academic assessment tools are selected. I think you mentioned this early on in your, I think there's different tools used based on grade and so forth, but what is the process to select those tools generally?
So generally, we're looking at exactly what the assessment is assessing and aligned to the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. And the information it's able to give us according to different demographics, for example, which I have all that data, so if you wanted to ask me a question, I just didn't put it up there, but I have it here. How does it assess our L population, our English language learners, our special ed? Is it norm referenced? Is it, what is it evidence-based? Has it been research? I mean, all the typical things that you would look at. So for example, last year when we were using the STAR data, it showed that our students, most all of our students were off the charts. Like everyone was above average, and we knew that simply, just from classroom observations and conversations and principals talking with their staff, we knew that it was simply not true. And especially when we took that data, which I had done a presentation last year where I aligned it to the MCAS, and they were night and day. So that was a signal to us straight away that, there were some concerns around the authenticity of that data to what was actually happening in our classrooms and state testing. So when looking at this data already, especially because we have the Google Data Analytics, it pulls up the students' previous MCAS scores. And so it should give us kind of like a projection into the future that we don't see a student who's, for example, all intensive, but yet their historical MCAS scores say that they're exceeding standards, right? So in that sense, we're always looking at all those pieces of data moving forward, but that is like a hallmark that we're looking at as we continue to move forward with the tools that we have right now.
So it sounds like there's periods where you're kind of assessing your assessment tools.
Yes.
And trying to figure out if it's actually showing you what is useful and is accurate. Mm-hmm. Is there sort of a group of you doing that at system-wide, or is it sort of left up to each school to kind of figure that out?
So we're growing, and so we started the district data team this year. Mm-hmm. At the administrative level, I meet with every principal weekly, so we are diving into the data together, because they are the instructional leaders of their buildings. So I could like go on and on. There's like so many different ways, because we also have to say, when looking at the assessment data, is it actually telling us a truth? Is it impact a curriculum tool is having or not having? There's like several different layers for us to look at.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Ask another question, or do you want to let someone else ask?
Mr. Menon?
Sure. I have a question and a comment. And I have to be mindful that this is mid-year data, and that, that there's some good trends to look at and some questions to ask. In looking at the, and this is purely speculative, and you can decline to speculate, but I'm wondering, in the data that indicates the number of students that are below grade level, whether that is part of the impact that COVID's had on the education system and for these kids. I'm just interested in your thinking on that.
Yes, so we're constantly looking at that impact and the interventions that students have had. So if we see a student who has had intensive intervention, yet they're still not moving, then we know that we need to make a change in our instruction with that student and do other assessments, right? So individualized assessments for that student. If we see a trend within a grade level, that's something different, where we would look and say, is it our curriculum tool? Is this assessment not effective? But we want to be able to say, have like all the evidence pulled together, like we said, looking at the whole child. Have they had intensive 8 weeks of intervention on a certain standard skill objective, and there's no movement? Well, let's go backwards and look at the previous standards and just keep working backwards in the progression to find a point of success, because that really tells you whether there's that COVID loss. We don't globally see a lot of that here in Newburyport, only because, I mean, it was before my time, but the superintendent was one of the first in the entire state to bring the school community back together into their learning, into the schools, and I think that had a positive impact on the learning loss, that it wasn't as significant. In some communities, it's pretty significant still.
And my comment is that I've lost count, but I probably sat through 50 of these presentations in my time on the school committee. And I really appreciate this, because I found it very informative, very clearly presented, and easily interpreted as to what we need to do next. And again, I got to remember that this is the mid-year data, and we're going to see some interesting data at the end of the year. But thank you very much. It's the best presentation, and I've sat through a lot of them. It's the best presentation we've had, and we need to continue to improve, but thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Can I ask one or two more questions? Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Walker.
I guess just broadly, I think you might have mentioned this, but I'm not sure I caught it. What is a typical time frame for someone to be evaluated at, like starting at tier 1 and evaluated again to see if they need to go to tier 2 and then evaluate again to go to tier 3? And is there a way to accelerate that time frame if there's someone who just, is critical and they're just at a point where they just need to go all the way to tier 3 right away? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I know you've talked about this past, but part of my questions are refreshers for
That's
people
totally
in the
fine.
audience.
I'm happy to answer, and it's going to be like a big global kind of answer,
that's
because
fine.
students are so individualized, right? And so for it's hard to say, okay, you're in tier 1 for 8 weeks, and then you're in tier 2 for 8 weeks, and you're in tier 3 for 8 weeks, and then you get tested, right? That's a pattern that some people like to have happen, because obviously we want to be as effective as possible in a student's learning so they get what they need sooner than later. But so one thing that we have done in the district was last summer we streamlined the whole entire SST process. And so in each building it's very similar. The way that it changes is developmentally the way that we look at students and their learning, and obviously the standards and the different interventions that work for an elementary student that might not work for a high school student. So in streamlining the process and having the similar paperwork and it collected and it moves with the child as they move throughout the grade levels. And we've started the implementation of the ISSPs, which are individual student support plans. So even if we find a student, right, we've done intervention, we find like it's starting to work, like we're week 8, it's starting to work, we're not ready yet to say we need to change something yet, we might extend that maybe for 4 weeks or what have you, depending on the school, the child, the situation, but we document it on the ISSP plan, so that's general ed, it's part of our DCAP, and that stays with the child. So at the end of this school year, for example, let's say they're utilizing an intervention that works really well for them, like a highlighted bottom line, I'll use that as an example. It's written into this plan and follows the student so that next year's teacher then doesn't have to start all over again saying, okay, I saw that this child was struggling a little bit last year, the report card says so, like what happened, what did they do, I need to go find that teacher, right? So now they have a plan that helps give a jump start to that student. In general sense, because we're doing, because we're looking at data significantly for each student, we're looking at it all the time, and the buildings themselves, like at the building-based level, they're looking at it more so. We have a better handle on our students and where they're at and who's making growth and who's not making growth, so that timeline will decrease somewhat because we're looking for like patterns and trends and things that are working and things that are not working. Sometimes, for example, in a special population, for example, for our L population, the instinct is we want to really help our L population to learn and be integrated into our community, and sometimes staff would like them to be evaluated for special education straight away. That's illegal, number one. We haven't given them due process to be within our community, in our school environment, get the interventions and the language learning that they need, right? So that would be an example of where we would kind of hold off. We're still giving the child what they need, but we're also giving them the opportunity to grow in their second language. And then on the other hand, we might have a student who has been struggling year after year, especially if we're looking at our early literacy data, and we say, okay, so the student was struggling when they were preschooler, although they weren't assessed. It's noted that they were struggling in preschool, in kindergarten they were struggling. Yep, some intervention worked, Foundations was working for them, a little bit Hegarty was working for them, but now we're beginning of first grade, and we're still seeing that there's a struggle there. For that student, we would want to probably move forward somewhat faster in the process.
Appreciate that. And then I promise my final question, Vice Chair. Do you have a sense of how many families utilize outside tutoring services? And is that part of any of your assessments? Do you ever ask that question?
I do not, because I know that our teachers provide like 1 hour after school, so there's a lot of tutoring on our end happening as well. Like, so for example, we got the Afghan grant, so we're offering to our middle school, high school students twice a week after school tutoring.
Right, yeah, I guess I'm wondering, outside of what the school offers, do we have a sense of how many families or parents are opting to use outside tutoring? Just a question, okay. So you don't really know that?
I don't really know that. I know that there's many opportunities, because I believe at Keller Park, am I correct in that? They offer tutoring for students there. I don't know how many students attend that, but it's a good question.
That would be, I think that would be a good data point too, of a parent, guardian survey.
I think it would be. I think it'd be worth considering if we if there's a way we could do that without being invasive. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I
Great.
think that's great. Yeah.
Ms. Higgins?
Thank you. Just another question at Bresnahan, because the early literacy is near and dear to my heart, but I'm seeing first, second, and third grade is not making a whole lot of movement on the Dibbles literacy side, and so just kind of a specific question for you, and then big picture is, I'm hearing from like various community members that the literacy coaches, if a student were to get into a literacy coach, that it really depends on who the teacher is, which teacher you get, what grade level you're in. the materials that they're seeing come home with their student and what materials they're being used. So I know that there are common expectations, but how do you ensure that teachers are kind of like meeting the expectations that you're setting around, you know, instructional practices and materials that are evidence-based?
So I'll take the first part, you take the second part? Okay, so in terms of the practice used to be, for the Title I students, it would be, okay, so in your classroom, you get 5 students, in your classroom, there's 5 students, in your classroom, there's 5 students, and that's going to make up our intervention groups, because we want to be equitable to the classrooms. So we don't use that model any longer. We are totally data-driven, and we look at who has a need, who are our most struggling learners, and what do they specifically need, and that's how our Title I groups are formed. The other piece that we've changed is that it's not, and I said this before, it isn't that you're in Title I and you stay in Title I for the rest of your educational career, because we're also using data to say, these are the objectives that we've done an intervention on. They're very, very specific. And then we assess the student, and if they're successful, we assess them again on a progress monitoring on all the overall standards. And if they seem to be successful, we kind of release them, right? And give them a least restrictive environment back into their classrooms. And then maybe there's other students who, during one of our benchmark assessments or progress monitoring happening in the classroom, that says this student is really struggling, here's specifically what they're struggling on. And so students may be picked up also anytime during the year. So I'll let the principal now speak about the actual staff.
So the way that our Title I teachers are organized right now, this may change in the future, just based on student need, but right now they are, for the most part, servicing one grade level each. So we have a teacher at kindergarten, at first grade, second, and third, and they collaborate with the classroom teachers to build their schedule and provide the intervention. So they are very consistent across grade level with what they're providing, and the team meets regularly with the literacy coach to make sure that they're sharing what's working, continuing to look at the data, seeing, you know, what they need to improve on. In terms of receiving different interventions or lessons based on the teacher, that may be, it may be that the students are at different levels. That might be one thing. It might also be parents with students in different grades who have different experiences with Title I teachers. That every year they're not always servicing the same grade, so it might be, you know, so-and-so in third grade one year, in first grade another, and the parents may be comparing it that way. And the books that are sent home are, the aim for the Title I book bags are just to get kids to continue to read at home. So they're books that we have not necessarily in our school or classroom libraries, but books that are at the level that the students who are receiving the services need. So the aim is to just get as many books home as possible, and those do vary, again, based on the student's level and what they need. I hope that answers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Reardon.
I think when we're thinking about the data presentations for the fall, and we're going through grade levels, it might be nice to have a slide after each grade level talking about trends, talking about impact of professional development, maybe even throwing up a mass curriculum frameworks, and this is what we saw, and this is what, you know, was driving maybe the certain PD thing we did that year, because we looked like, you know, this part of math, we, you know, across the board we just were struggling with. I think it would just maybe kind of bring the data a little bit more to life as far as, and then see the direct impact it's making at each level. But I know it's hard to do that with like mid-year and beginning year things. That was just my comment. And then the other thing I was just going to ask, you know, we didn't talk anything about Lexia Core, and I know all the teachers are using it, but they don't really use it in intervention, right? All kids use it. Do they look at that data as well? Because I'm sure you could probably, there's probably a correlation to mass frameworks in that as well. Do they look at that, or is that a classroom by classroom basis?
I'm short. They look at the data, especially if they're bringing a child to SST. So actually on the SST form, there's actually a space where the teachers fill out all the data points. So we have a full picture of looking at the individual student. Lots of teachers, I know they use it during intervention time in their classroom, but many use it for parents at home. Because students tend to be really independent when they're using that program because it reads to them, it talks to them. They love it, they ask for it. I mean, I've been through the classrooms where they're like, can I use Lexia? And it's a really great program, and it keeps growing in its development. So that's important to us as well.
Anyone else? Well, I really appreciate your time and work on this. I noticed the improvement with alignment of assessment as well as interventions across the grade levels. I know that that's so important, so I appreciate the work that's being done.
Thank you to the principals working so hard. And our teachers. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, subcommittee updates, finance, we didn't meet, but
We did not.
we are hopefully
On Thursday.
meeting on Thursday. Okay, so we can go right into the policy proposed changes.
Yeah, so this is a pretty extensive change, so I want to just propose a process and see how the committee and vice chair and
Sounds good.
chair. So at the last meeting, we did our first reading. We went through all of the individual items for change that were going to be either revised or replaced. And they provided a summary in today's packet, reiterating that and summarizing what we did for each policy. My proposal is to maybe take each section. I can quickly go through the list of items in the packet, but not go into a lot of detail on each item. And if members want to identify anything that they're not prepared to vote on as is tonight, that we could pull those out and then have a vote that would be all the items in Section A that haven't been pulled out, collectively vote on those, and then proceed to Section B. And then if we have time, we can go back and review the items that people wanted to pull out, and then we can decide if we want to revise on the fly or if we want to carry the comments forward to the next meeting and revise those additional items for the next meeting. Does that make sense? Anyone have any objections to that?
So you're saying that we could potentially make some amendments, but if it seems like it's going to be too maybe labor intensive, we could hold off.
Right.
Okay.
But not talk about those potential amendments in the body of the discussion initially. We can
Okay.
have those just big, more in-depth conversations once we've adopted the ones we're pretty comfortable with in the beginning. Is
That sounds
okay?
good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so starting with Section A, ACA, so again, also included in your packet is only the changes, only the policies that have revisions. So last time we looked at, we had policies in here that were existing policies that had no revisions. Those have been taken out. So ACA is a replacement with the MASC version. And if you want to pull it out, just speak up and say, I'd like to pull it out. ACB is replacing an existing policy also with an MASC version. ACA, non-discrimination on basis of sex, is a mass policy that was not in our existing policy, so it's a new one. ACAB is also a replacement of our existing policy. ACC is an update, so also the numbering's been changed, but otherwise is an update to our existing policy. AAB is an update and a change of reference. ADC is a new policy. ADDA is just very minor updates, revisions to the gender-neutral references. And then ADDA-R is a new policy. So based on the silence, I didn't hear any that people are prepared to remove. So I guess I would propose that we go ahead and move to, I can make the motion if you're comfortable with that, okay. I would propose we move to accept the policy revisions for Section A as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay.
Who was the second?
Right. Ms. Higgins? This all looks straightforward, so. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right, so moving on to section B. BAA is a mask policy that we didn't currently have, so it'd be a new policy. BB, an update. And then, as you'll see, the change is covered in other sections referenced in this list. BBBA, BBBC, and BBBE. BBA has been updated to include an item on personnel matters. BBAA, minor changes and a reference update. BBBA and BBBB is a MASC policy. Again, it takes some of the information that was in the former BB policy. So it's a new policy, but it includes some things that were already in our policy. BBBC is a mask policy also, so it would be a new policy. BBBE is a new policy. BCA is an update to the lettering and also minor revisions. BCB, also changing the file reference and some very minor changes. BDB is a change to the reference also. So BDD, we recommended replacing with the MASC version. BDE, revised, as we discussed last time.
Ms. Walker,
Yes.
yeah, I have a question here. When I looked through this, it didn't seem like the FinCom description had changed. Is that,
Right, we have to pull
So
that.
why don't we pull this one out?
okay.
Because we haven't had a chance to get any input
That's all I'm
from the
We were going
FinCom.
to have that on our
Yeah.
agenda, but we didn't have our meeting.
So why don't we pull this one out for
okay.
consideration?
Thank you.
BDF was to replace with the MASC version, and it's quite more extensive. Keep that one in? Okay. BDFA, some minor changes to address some, just update it about the principal's role, et cetera. BDFA-E is a new policy. BDG, very minor wording changes. BE, changes to item C related to adjourning to another day. And actually, why don't we pull that one out, because I'd like to go over that one. There you go. BEC, minor changes. BEDA, update. BEDD, rules of order, very minor changes. BEDG,
I have a question
updated.
about that one,
Sure.
so maybe
Pull
just
that
take
one
it
out?
out. Thanks.
BEDH. This one had a lot of comments last time. Should we pull it out? Or do you guys want to keep it?
I liked it as presented in the packet.
Okay, anyone else subject? Okay, we'll keep that one in. BG was just a minor wording reference. BGE, also a slight change to current practice. To match current practice, sorry.
I'm sorry, could you pull out BEDH?
Yes.
I apologize.
That's okay. BGF, new policy. BHC, we updated to the mask version, MASC version. BHC, same thing, replaced it with the MASC version. BIA, just added a cross-reference. BIBA, this is a new policy, and the only change was that we removed the reference to the BID policy that was not in the previous iteration, because we don't have a BID policy. So based on that, I would propose that I would make a motion that we accept all of the proposed changes to Section B, with the exception of BDE, BE, BEDG, and BEDH.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So Section C. CA, administrative goals, just minor updates to the wording and reference. CBB, change the file reference and some wording. CBD, a new policy. CBI, replaced it with the MASC version. And Member Menon, did you have anything you wanted to add to that section?
Which,
Evaluation of the superintendent?
let me take a look at it.
All right, I'll
again.
pull that one out.
Yeah, just pull that out, thanks.
CCB, update the title. CE, wording changes. CHA, replaced with the MASC version and the reference. CHC, replace with the MASC version. CHCA, also replace that with the MASC version. CL, delete the whole policy, it's not required. And CM, add a reference. Any further thoughts on C before we vote on that? So I would make a motion that we accept the changes to section C with the exception of CBI.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Hurrah. Good job, everyone.
That was a good way of doing it. I appreciate that, Ms. Walker.
So if you want, we can go back and look at the ones we pulled out. So section A, we adopted in the entirety. So the next one was section BDE. Let me just pull that one up here. So BDE. Was the subcommittees of the school committee. So this one, we don't have updated, an updated explanation of the FinCom, Finance Subcommittee. So I don't know whether you want to try to hash that out tonight or hold for a future meeting so you guys can have a chance to talk about that and decide what you want to list there.
I'd rather do it on Thursday morning, since Steve will be
We'll have Mr.
hopefully
Cole
there.
with us, and, yeah.
Okay.
Would that be all right if we just hold on that till our next meeting?
That's totally fine with me.
Have an updated
I
version
think-
for you.
Yeah, I would suggest we just vote to post, I don't know. I guess we don't have to vote. We can just have it on the agenda. Yeah, we'll leave it off for now.
Yeah,
We'll bring it up at the next meeting.
With relation to that, when I drafted the description of the superintendent evaluation, and when I sent it out to the members of the policy committee, I had some notes underneath that, and what I would like to do is to see whether or not it makes sense to integrate some of those notes into the description. So I will take a look at that certainly before our next meeting and get back to everybody.
Okay, and I think I had responded to you, Mr. Menon, about that. It may be that those notes fit better in the superintendent evaluation section. So if you want, I can look back at what I said.
Yeah,
But we
no,
may want to hold on both of those.
Yeah.
So you have a chance to review those. Yeah, CBI. So we may want to hold the vote on CBI as well tonight for that reason, so you have a chance to review both.
Yep.
I would just suggest that if we do have revisions to consider at next meeting, that we get those in advance so that they can be included in the packet.
That would be great.
All right, so BDE we'll hold on. All right, the school committee meetings was the other one, BE, that Vice Chair Hall had suggested holding on.
Was that the one about the minutes?
Let me see.
I don't have, trying to get to it.
I know.
It's page 99. Joanne didn't print out a 134-page document for all of us?
She's got it. It's just our scrolling fingers are taking a while to catch up. It's all right.
So, yeah, I'm not sure if this is the thing I was thinking of, but when I was going through this, it looked like it was saying that the minutes should be distributed to the committee 72 hours in advance of voting, and now I can't find that specific reference.
Okay.
Was it
It
this
may
section?
have been,
I did see
I think that's a different policy.
It was under minutes, yeah.
That's BEDG.
Yeah, so let's hold on. Yeah, we have that one circled too.
Okay, so this is something else then. I don't think I requested this one.
Okay, anybody else have, okay, maybe I did.
You know,
Everybody
I-
good with BE? I just want you to look at BE. It's about our school committee meetings. Anyone have issues?
BEDH, right? That was my question.
You have a question on BDH, yeah. But anyone have a question? I think I was the one who suggested we pull this out.
The only thing highlighted is the 2 business day.
Yeah,
But the rest of it
you're
seems
right.
the
Which is
same.
standard practice,
All right,
right?
thank you.
Yeah.
So I was just misremembering what we were talking about. Okay, so we're good on BE. We can vote on that. So I will make a motion to vote to accept BE as proposed.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so BEDG, was that the one you had a question about, Vice Chair Hall?
Is that the one on the minutes?
Yes.
Now I just I'm scrolling too much. I just went into something else. BEDH. I'm almost there, sorry. But as I was saying, it was the 72 hours thing, if I can find that. Are you sure that's BEDH? 'Cause this
Yeah,
is
no, you're right. It's BEDG.
DG.
BEDG, okay.
And this is, we did update the yellow
Oh, here
sections.
it is. Yeah. Copies of the minutes will be sent to all committee members at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting. I mean, I guess that's fine if that's not excluding weekends and holidays like we do for posting for open meeting law. I just wanted it to align with the requirements for posting the packet.
This language is from MASC.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
but if you're concerned at all, we can hold and we can clarify that particular
Well, it
question.
might be fine because it doesn't specify about weekends, and
Right.
I just didn't want us to be in a situation where we need the minutes 24 hours prior to when the packet is posted. You know what I'm saying?
Right, no, this is 72 hours. It doesn't distinguish between whether it's weekend or
Oh,
not.
then that's completely fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the inconvenience.
That's fine. We can hold it if you want to clarify.
No, I think it's fine. I just didn't, like I said, I didn't want it to be out of sync with our posting requirements, but from what you're saying, it's not, so.
Doesn't seem it. Anyone has questions?
So that is fine. Ms.
yeah.
Yell, does this seem fine to you? Okay, good.
The only
Looking out
thing-
for you.
The only thing I see is that the word record is
Yes,
missing the
thank
O.
you. I'm glad you read it. I put it in there just to see if anyone was going to catch it.
And this font, what's up with that?
Yeah, I'll correct the spelling mistake. Thank you.
All right, so I think we are all set on this one then.
All right, if someone else wants to make a motion. All right, I move that we accept BEDG as proposed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next one was BEDH, which is the public comment. I know there was a lot of discussion at the last meeting about this, so I just thought, I think you had suggested holding it out too, right?
Yeah, I think this is actually fine now that I have just read it over to myself about 5 times. But I was really looking at number 3. So it says topics for discussion are limited to items within the school committee's scope of authority, which I'm fine with. I wanted to clarify that it wasn't limited to items on the agenda. So everybody's understanding? Okay, great, thank you.
I thought we were
I thought we
limiting
were
it to
limiting it
items
to
on.
items on the agenda.
Did that come up in the last, was that gonna be in the last policy meeting? Or did you guys not meet since the last meeting?
We talked about this,
Oh,
but,
you're on it too, right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was
This
forgetting.
is how it was proposed, but we can certainly, if there's suggested revisions, then that's.
Is this
fine.
by mask too, this one?
This is based on MASC, yeah.
When we talked with MASC, they said it's absolutely within our purview to limit public comment items on the agenda.
Correct.
Which I think is a darn good idea myself. So that's why I thought we had agreed to that. But
I do not. I would rather it be within the scope of authority.
So I think maybe we should hold on this one.
So I guess my question is, did policy vote this out first before it came to the whole committee, or
So,
were you not doing that?
We had already voted on this to come out to, we had already had first reading on this. So we did get clarification from MASC that we could change it to have items on the agenda. But we didn't include that in this version because, but yes, that would, Mr.
Is it-
Mennon's correct. We can do that. I guess I would look to the committee as a group to decide how you want to revise this and if you want to talk about this instead at a future meeting, but I don't know what we'd bring back to you. Other than, it sounds like there's disagreement on that, so.
I just have a question. So, if I remember correctly, when I was on policy, which was just once, we would vote on everything in that room, just like FinCom, and then bring it out for everybody else to vote on. So
We did.
so
We
you
already-
voted on this as it's written here, then?
This was already brought before, yes, this was
Okay.
brought before the committee at at the first reading. This hasn't changed since then.
Okay. I guess my comment.
We were asked at the
Between-
last meeting to confirm with our MASC rep
Okay.
if we could add, if we could change it to have items to the agenda, but I didn't make that change to this because we didn't vote on it at that meeting. We just asked the question, and also because it had already come in front of you, and that's.
Okay, so I guess the rest of my comment is that the phrase, the topic for discussion should be limited to the items. It's good, and I like it, and it kinda is almost the same as things that are on the agenda, almost. Because if people have not been here, the non-agenda items that tend to be talked about in public comment that have nothing to do with what we're talking about tend to be things about people's own children or other political things happening in the community type of thing. So while I would prefer if we can get into it and have another discussion about adding the agenda language, I do think that 3 is good. Because if someone comes in here and starts talking about how, their kid's special ed program isn't going well, that has nothing to do with us, and we can say, sorry, you have to stop talking, basically, Which is, you don't want people just to come in and just rant at you about something that has nothing to do with you. But if anybody else wants to bring it back out again, then that's fine.
Go ahead, Ms.
Yeah, so I would say I would agree with Mr. Callahan and Ms. Higgins. I mean, I understand there's concern about sort of things getting a little out of control, and we're trying to, make sure that we're staying focused on what's within the purview of the school committee. I do think it would be nice to provide an opportunity for members of the school community who have concerns or even have celebrations that they want to bring up at public comment that don't happen to be on the agenda. I think our agendas are very limited in topic, and so to me, I like this phrasing because it does give us the ability to limit what someone, if they're bringing something up, we can stop them and say that's not within our authority. I'm concerned a little bit about being the way that public bodies have now had to react to an extreme that I'm concerned about where we're going with that we're now becoming so closed to having any kind of public comment. And I'm not pointing at individuals or saying that it's just a particular mindset of one person. I'm just saying in general, this seems to be a trend where we're so afraid of what's going to be said in a public situation that we're almost making it so restrictive that I'm worried that it's not inclusive. So I like the way this is written because I think it gives us the power to, still be able to limit what people say at public comment, but frankly, I'm concerned that limiting it to the agenda is too restrictive.
I think any ambiguity in the policy is like a bad idea. So I think we need to be specific in the policy. I think that it's perfectly appropriate to limit, the city council does that, it's perfectly appropriate to limit comments. We can set up a whole other mechanism for people to celebrate, to share the things they want to share, and I just think public comment should be limited to the business at hand. and I feel very strongly about that. I would vote no on this policy, but I probably would move to amend it first. That's my feeling.
I agree. And it's not that I'm afraid of what people are going to say, it's that I don't feel we can be helpful to someone if they come in with a concern that's not on our agenda. We can't address it. So if you think of some past examples, like the man from the Pioneer League, right, who couldn't get the fields on a Sunday morning. If he just showed up here out of the blue with his public comment, he was upset that he couldn't reserve fields on a Sunday morning, then, you know, it's weeks before we can actually address his concern. But instead, there are mechanisms like email and phone calls to say, I have this issue. He works with Mr. Callahan to get it on the agenda. We invite him in, he makes his public comment, he was able to stick around and answer questions, and we could actually fix his problem. And if he were just to come in with a public comment, it would just be, we wouldn't have been able to help him in the time frame that he needed. And I know that we don't get a lot of people for public comment, but I just think that if people want help with something, or someone who has a great idea, like Karina Moltz had an idea for the gun storage policy. And again, if she had just come in and said it out of the blue, it would have been, you know, longer before we could actually address it. But instead, I'm not sure who she approached, maybe Ms. Spalding at the time. And we went through a process, and then I was able to have a conversation with her, and we got it on our agenda, we had a resolution. Then she came and gave her public comment, and it was impactful. So that's how I'm looking at it.
I don't think there's any reason we can't follow up with people if they bring something to public comment that we can't help them in the moment, but we have their name, we have their email address, we can certainly email them to say, I'd like to follow up and learn more information, or this is how we can get this resolved, or we can put this on another agenda. You know, there's plenty of people who may not know who to contact, or have already contacted someone and wasn't responded to for whatever reason, right? Like, but I think we should be an open body to hear whatever concerns that people might have. I mean, if someone has a concern about the special education services or whatever it is in the district, and that they want to voice those concerns, I think that they should have the opportunity to be heard regardless of what is specifically on the agenda. You know, school safety is on top of mind for a lot of families and a lot of parents, and depending on what is in the news on any given week, if some horrible situation has occurred, if that family member wants to come in and say, you know, I am concerned about the safety in my child's school and I want, you know, an answer to this, the superintendent can follow up with them later. The superintendent could, you know, answer the question in their superintendent's comments later, you know, that evening. Not that they certainly have to, but I think we should give people an opportunity to be heard, especially since it is so few public comment.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'll just say, I'm okay with it the way it's written, so it's fine with me. I will say, just a couple of years ago, a group of parents came in and talked about dyslexia screening. I don't remember that being on the agenda that night, but it was a really impassioned group of parents, and I think it led to some changes. We ended up adopting foundations, I think, a couple of years after that, but at least it got that conversation started, so.
Yeah, I know at our last school committee meeting, there was concern, so I did, you know, reach out to legal, and legal did say the school committee has the authority to limit the public comment to, you know, within the agenda. And public comment is limited speech as it is. You know, follow up when we do presentations and parents, you know, have concerns. You know, I think we do make ourselves accessible. I've had, since our safety meetings, I have met with parents with individual concerns. So I think, you know, I think there's other avenues. I think we talked about having focus groups in the fall to get more parent voice and
One way that we've
those.
done that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's up to the school committee. I mean, obviously, it's your decision on, I just think when we're looking at issues, especially if I think parents have specific issues or concerns, it's looking at the forum where, as you said, that we can problem solve and work together. But that's just on the legal side, regarding public comment. School committees do have the authority to limit to the agenda.
So could we hold this one for next time?
Yeah, I just want to make one more comment. I think something I would like committee members to just consider is, as a public body, expectations for parents and families to access us certain ways may be by nature restrictive to those people who can access us. And saying that you can come to us through email, you can approach us this way and that, I think we should consider whether that's being overly restrictive and presumptive about people's ability to access everything that we list. And we are a public body. We are answering to the public, and I feel like this is a small accommodation, frankly, within boundaries, that I feel comfortable opening up that ability, having us be, and I appreciate the mayor's example. I mean, I can't think of a specific situation that we've had because we've had very little public comment, frankly. I just would be worried about being afraid and making decisions because we're afraid. Because we are a public body, and for whatever reason, as a public official, we have to accept the public in all its forms. So I would just be open, have people be cautious about making decisions based on fear, and also just understand that, there are other mechanisms to access the superintendent and so forth. The agenda ultimately is a set thing. It's set by the vice chair and the chair and the superintendent. So if somebody, for some reason, doesn't get to you, and they're not on the agenda, but they have something urgent that they would like us to be aware of, I would like them to feel that they could come to us. And so I appreciate that you want to postpone this for future discussion, and maybe we could, if you want to have a draft, maybe somebody could make a motion to bring forward a different version of this, and we could compare the two at the next meeting.
If I could just clarify a point.
Go ahead.
I have never been afraid to hear public comment, and as the vice chair during COVID, we took a lot of public comment. So I don't think it doesn't feel like an accurate description of my reasoning for suggesting we limit things to the agenda. And I just wanted to say that. Somebody else may be scared of it, but I've never been scared of public comment and have embraced it. But I also think that the business of the school committee is exercised through its agenda. And I think that is a good way to invite comment. I will also point out that in all of the years I've been here, really I can think of 2 or 3 instances where we had significant public comment. The idea of the public coming in and having comment, I think it's part of our meeting. I have defended it all my years on the school committee, but it's not a mechanism, I think, that is used by the community effectively. That's, but I'm not afraid of public comment, and that's not my rationale.
It's not mine either. I meant to, maybe I didn't clarify that, but it's really about efficiency and being helpful to people, which I don't think we're helpful for them to come in here and say something and then we can't even address it. So
I don't know why we're forgetting me. The next step is somebody makes a proposal, or we bring it forward.
What was the other thing? Leave it to the next
We
meeting?
can either vote on it tonight, but nobody's made a change, or we can carry it. I think Vice Chair Hall suggested bringing it to the next meeting, so
That's what I'd like to do.
I'm not the decider.
I'm happy to vote, but, whatever the group wants to do.
And I'll bring up my question back again. If it goes back, will it go back to policy first?
I don't
or just,
think-
or just come right here?
I don't see a reason for it to come back to policy first. I think,
Okay.
we got the answer, I mean, I'm looking to the vice chair. How do you want to move forward? Do you want a motion to proceed with this, or?
I'd like to postpone discussion of it till the next meeting.
So what will be in the packet will be what's in front of you right now, unless somebody else has a proposed addition.
That gives us time to develop something.
Yep. Agreed.
The next item then is, that's it. So I don't think we have to vote on anything more in item B, section B. Section C, I would suggest, Mr. Menon, that you look at CBI.
Yep.
Between now and the next time, and we don't have to vote on anything else.
So we'll cover those few sections that were pulled and not resolved at the next meeting. Would there be any additional topics from policy?
I don't believe we're ready to bring anything more before the
Okay.
end of the year, because we won't have time to get through 2 more readings based on what I've
Right.
understood as our schedule.
For CBI, does it make sense for me to propose language and get it out to everybody?
I think, Mr. Menon, what you should do is look at CBI and the notes that you had and see if it fits in with CBI, and therefore, yeah, I think if it does, then I would suggest it would be good to run that. Maybe, I don't think we're gonna meet again as a policy committee until after we meet next. So yeah, I think at this point, it's a discussion at this level on how to revise it.
Great. Mr. Menon, do you have
do.
an update for superintendent's
I do.
evaluation? Great.
On May 4th, I sent out a draft of the superintendent evaluation form and asked people if they had any comments or thoughts on it, aside from the thought that I had, which doesn't address the strategic plan at all. I got no feedback from anybody, so what I would like to do next is set up a meeting with the assistant superintendent and Sarah and myself and see if we can tweak some language so that we can get the strategic plan into the evaluation as a point where the superintendent's evaluated on. The mechanism for doing the evaluation is that we will set up a Google Classroom. You will have access to that. The evaluation will be posted on that. The only other people who will have access to that will be Sarah and myself, so that we can compile the data. And again, what we have done over the years is we compile the data, do the number crunching that we do, and come out with rankings based on feedback from everybody. But we also encourage comments, and we don't identify the comments, but we do color code them, so that people can see a sort of a through line for whoever is raising certain issues. So, and then those comments then become part of the evaluation form. We give the superintendent the evaluation in executive session, and then we come out and then do it publicly, and then vote on it. So I think that's the plan. It would be really helpful if everybody completes the form once we get it up there by July 31st, so that we can have a conversation at the retreat. That's my report.
Great, thank you. Superintendent's report?
All right. Just a few items on the superintendent's report, just to save some time. We're in the process of finishing our MCAS testing, so I'll just send you those dates of where we're at. We're kind of excited. We have a few new things. As you've been reading in the superintendent memo, the PLC class, skills-based instruction class, that I've had the great fortune of working with great educators like Mary Kate Allen, really developing a skills-based unit from start to finish. It's been a great experience for me to get to work with our teachers again. It's a lot of fun working with this group of people.
I can testify that they all stayed after class last time, because it ran right into our policy meeting.
That's right. So part of that is we're utilizing our anchor text is Fear Isn't Always Equal by Rick Wormley. And then he has a new edition, a second edition, that's really been the anchor text for the whole PLC for me in the many years I've worked with teachers in working on skills-based units. So, long story short, I said, he's been such an important factor in this work. I reached out to him personally. He actually reached back out to me. And we had a great conversation for the past couple of weeks. So at our last class tomorrow afternoon, he's actually going to Zoom in and work with our teachers and answer their questions. On top of that, we're in the process of getting him to be our keynote speaker moving into the opening day next year. And so Rick Wormley is just his background in education. He's I think one of the best. But he's a certified teacher across America. He brings innovation and energy in his writing, instructional practices. He spent 38 years teaching math, science, English, physical education, health, and history, as well as coaching teachers and principal. Rick's work has been reported in numerous media outlets: Good Morning America, National Geographic magazine. He's a columnist for an educational magazine, contributes to ASCD's educational leadership on a regular basis, and he's presented in 50 states and around the world. So we're really excited to partner with him, and he's really excited about the work that we're doing. Part of tonight also is, we talk about Swayze and professional development and working with teachers and coaching administrators. This is the type of things that we would not be able to bring in to Newburyport without the Swayze Foundation. So we're really excited. I'm excited, and our teachers are excited to work with him individually tomorrow. The other piece that through our conversations through the budget and a lot of your great questions, really tying, a lot of the questions are how much funding are we spending on, for example, SEL, or how much funding is going towards a specific initiative. So listening to that, and part of my memo that I've been sending out the last few weeks, is AlloView Finance Software. That's a software that ties directly to the Munis account. And what's great with that is, and looking at the overview, it's going to really assist us with communication in developing really specific financial management, allocating budgets, but also answering a lot of those questions. So what's really nice about the program is the different line items that are in the operational budget. We can tag that towards SEL. We could tag it to strategic plan, initiatives. So we can easily create reports that are very easily to read and understand, instead of having the mad financial guy back there trying to calculate through the Munis. So this is just one way, I think, of communicating our funding needs, and allocations. So we've had multiple meetings, 4 or 5 meetings with this group, and we're really excited about the opportunity. So with that being said, we're gonna have another meeting, and then that, I'm hoping, will be part of our budget process next year. We'll be able to run some easy financial reports that is very digestible for not only school committee, but for the general public. So that's another endeavor that we're working towards through a lot of your feedback throughout our budget process. So we're excited about that too. Not to put the mayor on the spot, but we did go to the, it's not on my report, but the ADL breakfast in Salem, where they were recognizing a couple educators, and then also Police Chief of Saugus, Dan Bauer, who's one of my good friends, who's now going to be the superintendent in Danvers, was recognized for Educator of the Year. The ADL sponsors this breakfast every year, And we had a great keynote speech by Rachel Rollins, the U.S. Attorney, along with Paul Tucker and a lot of great speakers. So really, it was a partnership of the ADL with law enforcement, educators, and students. And the messaging there is how we need to all come together and fight anti-Semitism, fight hate. And it was very motivational. I left there really motivated to continue the work that we're doing here and how important this work is. And I know I had the opportunity to have breakfast with the mayor, which is always nice. But I'm not sure, if you want to just talk about that, just.
No, I think you kind of said it all. It was really a great event, a lot of energy in the room. It was great that students were involved. We had a group of Newburyport students come up to us afterwards, which was great. But that was my first time at the event, so I appreciate Mark Tucker for the invitation. But yeah, no, the speakers were wonderful that day.
Awesome. And then today we had our dress rehearsal. That's why we were kind of running around a little, trying to get the technology up and running. But I got invited to the dress rehearsal at the firehouse, Terezin, the Children of the Holocaust. And Mr. Menon, he did not buy me popcorn, but he's the one. I met him over there. So what a powerful show. And I know in the previous years we had that play in Newburyport Public Schools, and that's something that we want to bring back. But it was just amazing. I want to thank them and for inviting me there, and it's just an amazing play. So, and that's my superintendent's report.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any new business? Okay, then, motion to adjourn?
Oh, I do. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Thank God for Michelle over there. So part of looking at our numbers for next year and working with Mr. Wolf, so we have, I think, more students. I have the numbers, but some more students who are going to be attending Whittier Tech, which frees up some more slots at the high school. We've had a lot of interest in our school choice program for neighboring families. So talking with Mr. Wolf, we could move to add 5 more slots in grade 10 and 5 more slots in grade 11. So my recommendation would to approve that. So we have, it's a good thing. It's a catch-22 in the sense that we got a great school system where a lot of families in the neighboring communities would like to attend, and working with our principals, we do have additional slots there, so.
So would it be, so 5 more for entering grade 10?
Correct.
And then entering grade 11?
Correct, for next
Go ahead.
year, yeah.
Okay.
Grade 10, 5, and then also grade 11, 5.
And
And
is that,
Miss- yeah.
is that something you would need us to vote on to move it?
So we
vote on
could,
choice.
we could, yeah, school committee votes on choice.
We voted on the original numbers, so. any
Original
revisions
numbers,
would be-
yeah, and we continue to monitor the numbers, but as I said, with those, with opening up seats there, we have the ability to do that, so.
Great.
yeah.
So if we get that on our agenda for the next meeting, does that work with your timing? Or were you thinking we needed to vote on it right now?
We probably, if we
Can't,
could,
it's
no,
not-
you can't vote on
I
it
didn't think
now.
so.
But under new business, we could put that on. Ms. Yell oversees our school choice numbers,
Right.
so that would work,
So that's
right?
okay if we vote on it on June 5th?
June 5th.
That'll work? Okay.
Yeah, so we can just open it up after that.
We could waive our rules.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
So it's,
If you think June 5th is okay, and in the meantime, if you're in contact with families, I'm sure it's fine to let them know that we're working on opening up these slots. So it's something that they can anticipate.
So that would be working on, so we can work on the ad to put it in the newspaper so that it's prepared for the June 5th vote, is that what you're saying?
Right, we can just kind of
yeah,
anticipate that.
we have to,
I
I mean,
don't think this is gonna be controversial, right?
it's, if we could, I mean, with waiving the rule tonight and do a vote, that would probably be better for us, correct? Because then we could advertise.
That would work too. It's really, you know, the faster they get the registrations in and the families accepted, the faster the enrollment happens to get the information to the schools so they can do the scheduling.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is just a rule, a general rule that we follow. I don't think it's a policy. It's
Okay.
just it's a meeting rule that we're all in agreement on, but I don't think it's anywhere in our policies.
I think it's an
Actually,
open
the budget
meeting
was
law.
voted once.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the agenda for a vote, and
Yeah.
there were rules.
So, I mean, I mean, I know it's kind of the, you know, your preference that it be posted, and I think we all agree on that, but I think if we want to move forward with this.
I'd be happy to make the motion to waive the rules so that we can vote on this tonight.
Second. Oh, you can have it. You can have it.
Mayor has.
Who- I think
Give it to
Mayor got the
Juliet.
second. Any
I don't like it.
discussion on that?
First to waive.
Is there any discussion on that? I'll say if, you know, if there's no policy preventing us from doing that, I'm in support of it. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move, so we're going to vote on it now? I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent to open 10 additional slots at the high school, 10th and 11th grade, 5 each.
Second.
I'm good. I just wanted.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go. All right.
All right. You all.
Motion to adjourn.
You do that?
Brian, do you want to second that?
Second.
He's moving. You're second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go.